By the end of this podcast episode, you'll never look at sleep the same way. At least, I haven't ever since I interviewed Dr. Peter Martone on possibly the most important thing you can know about sleep. He settles the age-old question of what is the best sleep position. But not just that, he explains how the first hour of your sleep is the only real time that you can control and just why it's so important that we actually fall asleep the right way. And his approach checks the box for passing the test of evolutionary biology. This isn't just some trendy biohack that's going to fade away, but it fits with what he calls his immutable laws of human health. So if you have any problems with posture, particularly forward head posture, meaning that your neck protrudes forward, kind of like this. If you're watching the video, you can see what I'm doing with my neck. It's coming out well in front of my chest. And that's caused by things like excessive use of technology and staring down at phones and all that, and the disastrous consequences that can have on our long-term well-being. If you have problems with low HRV or high resting heart rate or other biomarkers that are out of balance like that, it could be because your parasympathetic nervous system gets inhibited by the way you sleep. His quick fix and his tip around that can certainly help. Our guest this week is Dr. Peter Martone. He's an educator, injury prevention specialist, and patient care health practitioner who's been focused on improving patients' biomechanics for over 23 years. During his private practice as a chiropractor, Dr. Martone believed that the structure of your spine affects the function of your central nervous system, and this interference is at the root cause of most of the chronic problems people face. Dr. Martone now uses this principle as the cornerstone to help people get way better sleep. His techniques have been featured on CBS, NBC, Fox News, and over 50 international podcasts. He currently travels the country teaching people how to regain their health in bed by getting way better sleep. And if you like this kind of thing, I recorded an episode that would nicely accompany this back with Matt Gallant. Matt spent about $42,000 optimizing his sleep. So after you get the basics that we cover here, if you want a little extra support, episode number 92, you can find at mindbodypeak.com/92. And there we go over some of the more advanced, fancy biohacks, everything that he's tried. I also wrote an article on the tips and tricks I used to really optimize my sleep. It was my Achilles heel for a very long time, and I've overcome that. I now sleep great, and I recover great because of it. I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode, and the show notes will all be at mindbodypeak.com/142. And if you want to check out the product that Dr. Martone created to make this sleeping position a bit easier, you don't need it, it's not essential, but it makes it just a little bit easier. You can look up the neck nest, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this as well. And if you find this episode interesting, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and tag me, tag Dr. Martone on Instagram at mindbodypeakperformance, and one of us will get back to you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode with Dr. Peter Martone. Dr. Martone, welcome to Mind Body Peak Performance.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am really excited to dive in with an audience that is ready to listen and ready to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we're discussing a topic that is going to be key for a lot of people. I know that in my own journey, my own wellness journey, sleep has been a big part of it. And you have some ideas that are a bit controversial. They go against the grain. And so I'm looking forward to diving into that with you in 1 minute. But before we get started today, tell me, what are the unusual non-negotiables you've done for your health, your performance, and your bioharmony?
What a great question. So a non-negotiable for me is sleep. Monday through Thursday, Sunday through Thursday, I set a bedtime and I stick with it. And number two, which being a Italian from Boston, was never a word, but it's putting myself in a high heat situation like a sauna or a jacuzzi, and meditating, right? Getting to a state where you're not consciously thinking, but you're allowing to open up your space with intention for download, and to be able to slow my brain down, especially being the ADD brain that it is. It's been unbelievable to really get myself resonating on all levels, because if you're not if you don't have a purpose in life, you'll go enthusiastically in one direction from one yes, and then enthusiastically into another direction, which then down the road, if it could be a contradiction to who you are as a person, and it tears your resonation apart.
Yeah, you can only commit to so many things and follow through on so many things at a time.
Yeah, and they have to be in line with your sole purpose or the reason why you were put on this planet. And I believe that that is the third one. You got to write, you got to journal, you got to get your stuff down on paper, and you got to really start to lay out what you want your legacy to be on this planet.
How do you go about saying no to all the opportunities that present themselves that can distract you from that? Because I'm sure you get lots of things coming your way. Everyone wants a piece of your attention, and it can be difficult to use that no and conserve your energy. But at the same time, it's essential if you want to actually go down the path that you want to go down.
I am a person that suffered from, I've always been a happy person. I have ADD. I have a really outgoing personality. And in the absence of clarity around my sole purpose, it's difficult to tell differences between opportunities and distractions. I learned that from my good friend, Garrett Gunderson. So I would just take opportunities, not knowing if they were aligned with where I wanted to go. And then I would find myself torn apart because of the level of contradiction. Whether it seems like a contradiction at the beginning, it's like, a health person opened up a coin laundromat. It's like operate laundry. It might be a good opportunity, but it is not in line with where I'm going. I have different projects going on with multiple different people, but they're all going in line with what I'm trying to accomplish. So I will only take on a project if we have somebody to operate that, and if we have staff that would be able to implement, what the intention is that we're doing, and I will only take on 3 projects at one time.
So you've clarified and come up with a code of conduct, a list, a checklist. Like it has to meet these certain criteria in order for you to consider it.
So with somebody that has cross dominance, and we can kind of go over that, that's part of an avatar and an understanding of a person that you are. So that would be your right-handed or your left-eyed. That's a cross-dominant individual. That's going to be more like an ADD person. That person is also going to have an addictive personality. So the addictive personality is going to find it difficult sleeping, different things like that. But what they will do is they will go down a road. Once they start drinking, they'll keep drinking. And then they'll go to something else. And then they'll go to something else. If you don't have frameworks and roadblocks or barriers to be able to, in your life, to say that are your non-negotiables, like if I have a drink, I will only have 2, right? And, at a specific time, I'll write a new contract with myself and say, I'll have 3 or 4 because it's one party a year. So those are non-negotiables. You can have a good time, but you have to have those roadblocks. If not, you'll go down the wrong path quickly.
What is the link between ADD and productivity and sleep? Because I think that there's something very profound there, and I don't hear it discussed much at all.
Yeah, you actually won't hear it discussed at all, because I look for a whole bunch of information and nobody's talking about it. You see, most people talk, when they talk about sleep, they talk about sleep from as far as I'm concerned, a 2-legged stool, right? They talk about sleep from, get better rest and recharge. So they call, rest and recharge, and then repair. You repair at night and you recharge at night. Well, what most people on this planet don't understand is the structure, how your structure is being affected at night when you sleep by the positioning that you're sleeping in. And I'm talking about your posture or the structure of your spine. And the reason why people don't dive into that is because then the next level, they don't understand how the structure of your spine affects your total health and well-being. And more specifically in the ADD population. Because ADD is not a disease or a disorder. It's just a brain that requires a lot of spin. So picture a top. The ADD brain, that top needs to be spinning a lot faster to keep it focused. The slower the top goes, the more all over the place it is. A good example of that would be if I'm studying, like I went to try to write, I'm writing new protocols in a whole new, certification program we're putting together. And I tried to go up to my lake house, sit out on the deck, birds were chirping. I'm like, I'm going to get so much writing done in this space. A bird flew by. I looked at the bird. I heard a frog, gobble, whatever it does. A frog, was chirping. I went to a bar, sat down. There were 100 people around, and I wrote for 3 hours because you have to have a lot going on in your brain to be able to focus. And understanding that's because of the neurology in the brain. When you lose the structure of the spine based on the way you sleep, you slow the spin down in your brain because we're not concerned about structure and sleeping position. That's causing anxiety because you're not getting the neurological input into the vermis of the brain to be able to keep the prefrontal cortex focused. So positioning is really key when you're talking about ADD and sleep.
Absolutely. That's a great way to conceptualize it, the spinning top. And also, this applies to really everyone, though. Your posture throughout the day, when you sleep especially. I want to go into why it matters even more so when you sleep. But so that people understand the importance of this in general, can you talk about forward head posture and the different things you're seeing and the impact those have on the body and mind?
Yeah, so what's really important to understand is the body, if it's alive, is adapting to stress. Stress, as far as eustress, is good stress, and distress is bad stress. So you have to understand, if we jump into the water and it's cold, our body will shiver. That's adapting to stress. So when you are, let's say you're sleeping and your head's coming forward, body posture adjusts to head position. So now as the head comes forward, the rest of the spine is rotating all the way down. That's happening. The neurology is getting stressed. So then it's engaging the muscle structure and twisting the spine all the way down to bring the posture back. Well, that tension with that forward head posture affects a very, very specific nerve, and that's called your vagus nerve. The vagus nerve represents 80%, 75 to 80% of all of what's called the parasympathetic nerve innervation to the organs. So we have two very specific systems in our body. We have autonomic nervous system, which is broken up into sympathetics, which is your survive systems, and then your parasympathetics, which are your thrive systems. And 85% of the thrive systems are all through the vagus nerve. So when you suppress that structure due to forward head posture and you interfere with that vagus nerve function, you're suppressing reproduction, hormonal balance, immune system, and digestion. So all three of those systems get suppressed because your vagus nerve is compressed due to forward head posture.
Yeah, and it's such a small tweak, or it's seemingly small tweak, that being on your screens, having your head a little more forward, peering at the computer or the phone or whatever it is, how just that over time becomes an adaptation that the body must do in order to be more efficient at your chosen activity. And then that also keeps you in a stressed out state, which impairs digestion, which impairs the ability to metabolize and convert food into energy and things that your body can use for fuel. So this one little, what seems like a little tweak, actually can have such a cascade of negative biological consequences.
Yeah, when you ever see anybody that looks in the mirror and they're like, oh, my shoulders aren't aligned. Oh, my hips are out of alignment. Or I believe that, that this shoulder's higher than the other. It's all due to adaptation from forward head posture. And that's being reinforced because we're on the screen all day long. That's being reinforced by side sleeping and tucking your chin down because your spine's like clay. It's moldable. And if you mold it in one position 8 hours a night, you're going to destroy its structure. That's why when somebody comes into our offices, I already know what's wrong with them because everybody has the same thing that's wrong with them because most people live the same lifestyles. So now when people come in and I'm like, listen, let's just put your paperwork face down. I'm going to tell you what's going on. And you can say it with such accuracy. and predictability, because most people have the same issues because they all have the same patterns. Nobody's changing it until now.
And also with forward head posture, you might know better than I do. For every inch of forward head posture you have, how many extra pounds that's putting of pressure?
20 pounds, give or take, with the weight of your head. Yeah. 20 extra pounds of pressure, effective pressure on the back of your neck and down into your shoulders.
So you can see with a 2-inch forward head posture, which isn't all that uncommon, you're all of a sudden putting a lot of extra strain on your neck, which in turn affects your entire body.
Yeah, and then on a lateral x-ray, you see bone spurs off the back of the skull, which is often the case with somebody with that forward head posture that has it from a long period of time. And it's right at the back of the skull. It feels like a little bump, but most people have a big bump with a big long bone spur coming off of it. And that's just from having forward head posture their whole life.
And then also the curvature of the spine is also extremely important. And if you have abnormalities there, which are not really actually that abnormal, but they're pathological, they're not good, you can get kyphosis and lordosis and other conditions. What's the impact of those on health?
Body posture adjust to head position. That's the writing reflex. I have a little spine in front of me. So you should see a curve in the neck. As long as you have a curve in the neck, you're going to have a curve that's in the thoracic area, and then an equal curve down in the lumbar area. So the curves of our spine are actually the shock absorbers. It's not the discs, which we thought. It's the shape of the spine that works as a spring. As you damage the cervical curve, this is what happens first. You're going to lose the curve. When you have forward head posture, most of the time you've lost this curve. Then the body's going to make it up with these scolioses, and then every nerve in the spine is mapped. So if you have, let's say, a kyphosis or a slight scoliosis, those are just altered curves in the spine, at T2 to T4, you're going to have breathing issues. That patient's going to have asthma. They're going to have heart palpitations. T5 to T9, upper portions of the digestive tract. Then gallbladder. Everything's mapped along the spine. The spine's like a circuit panel for your health. And then when the organ's irritated, then the muscle protects it. So people think they have muscle issues, but muscle pains actually window into your health because it's telling you what the organ's doing on the inside.
That is such an important concept to look beyond the muscle a lot of times, because the analogy of the spine being a circuit breaker, a control panel into your health. How do you actually go about using that? Okay, so say I have a certain muscle pain somewhere. Am I going to want to look up a specialist, and can I find a chart online that could help me decode where potentially in my spine there might be an issue?
Now you're talking my language. I love this. So we just, we're coming up with this certification program. And what this certification is, it's a neurostructural protocol. So it's a way to look past listen to somebody's symptoms, but look past somebody's symptoms and treat what you see. Whether you're a chiropractor, whether you're a massage therapist, an occupational therapist, a trainer, I want people to all use a similar lens with how they see people, because then you guys will start to treat through this interdisciplinary network the same. So when you refer to somebody with an NSP certification, you're looking at the same. And what you're doing is you're looking, just what you said, past the muscle tension, past the symptomatology, because the symptomatology is just the tip of the iceberg. And you're looking at the neurology, because the neurology and how the body's moving and functioning and how it feels on palpation will tell you way more about what's going on. So there's a chart that's called the Meric chart, MERC, and it's a map of all the nerves. And what you do, you Google the Meric chart. You can even go to Atlantis Chiropractic or Atlantis Wellness, and I think we have one on our website. But it just gives you a map of every single nerve. 80 to 85% of everybody in our office that has thyroid problems has degeneration at C5, C6, which is the direct innervation to the thyroid gland. So you're able to start to see when you have internal issues, holy mackerel, there may be a spine problem. So then I would go to a chiropractor that's not focused on pain, but they're focused on neurology.
It seems like a great place to start in general, because yeah, we can throw iodine and T2 and other things to work on the thyroid. And ultimately, it might help while we're using it, but then we stop and the problems persist. And if we actually address the root cause, the more foundational underpinning of why it's not working properly, because all organs, glands, structures in the body should work properly, and given the right support, they will. But if we focus on this first, then perhaps we don't need these other things that also come with their own whole set of downsides.
And think about, like, we should be more concerned with being less invasive, right? We should start from non-invasive and then work our way down. Let's say you have your TV plugged in and there's a bunch of stuff plugged in, and all of a sudden 4 things blow out in your living room. Where's the first place you're going to go? You're going to go down to the fuse panel to see what the power is coming up to the living room. Well, in the body, it doesn't work exactly like that. What happens is there's a dimmer switch. So instead of the power going completely out, let's say we dim the switch because of nerve pressure down to 50%. Now the light's only at 50% function. You can put all the new bulbs you want in there. And in the body, it's the same way. If you have pressure on the nerve that's going to the digestive tract, you can put all of the good food you want in there. You can go gluten-free. You can put all the probiotics you want. But if it's not expressing health at 100%, you're always going to have a suppression that's due to the structure that you can control. And that is the why behind why I'm in the sleep industry. I didn't get in the sleep industry to help people sleep. I mean, I think it's awesome. I wanted to be here. I got in the sleep industry to change their structure in bed, use their time in bed to sleep correctly, to improve the structure of their spine, so then we can improve the overall structure of their health.
And particularly at night, because it's something that everyone does consistently and for long periods, mostly interrupted time. Is that why?
Exactly. So like there are some things within chiropractic where they'll put something under their neck and they'll say, okay, do this 10 minutes a day. And you'll do it 10 minutes a day, and you'll do it 10 minutes a day until you don't want to do it 10 minutes a day anymore. And then it'll go in the closet with everything else. Well, so what I figured, I'm like, listen, what if we can do this for 8 hours a day and you can do it while you sleep? Because that's the time when you're going to bed, and it is possible. We take people that have been insomniacs, that have sleep apnea, that have issues with headaches, and we have almost helped every condition on the planet by getting them to sleep differently. And it's not easy. It's not easy to change the way that you sleep. So when I tell people, just start 1 hour a night in a position that is sustainable for the rest of the night.
Okay, well, let's dig into that then. What is the ideal sleeping position we can start off for the first hour of our night, or ideally the whole night?
So if we look at the spine, we don't want a straight spine. We want a curve in the neck. So because we're on a computer all day long and we're texting, we want to, instead of let's say we lie on our back, we don't want anything under our head. When we put something under our head, we actually, break down the structure of the spine. So we want something under our neck. We want something under our neck, but we don't want to support the head at the same time. So we want to put something under our neck and then let the back of the head hang off of the pillow. All right. So you got the neck nest right here. You can use a neck nest. You can use a towel. You can use a shoe, whatever you want. But a neck nest is designed to be angled up, go under your neck, and then the weight of your head is off of the back of the neck nest. So it's gently distracting or stretching the curve into my neck. So I'm not supporting my head with my chin tucked. I'm opening up my airway and I'm looking straight up at the ceiling.
Yeah, Dr. Martone, I was thinking about this previously. And if forward head posture is indeed the problem that a lot of people who specialize in this stuff know that it is, and the mainstream awareness around it is growing. But if that's a big issue and we're sleeping with a huge pillow underneath our head every night, we're going to be further atrophying the muscles in the neck, and we're going to be exacerbating the problem for hopefully 8 hours every single night. So it seems to me like the obvious thing would be to minimize the support under the head itself and to apply more support to the neck where it's more needed, like underneath the back of the head. Why isn't this well known? Why aren't people doing this in general?
First off, when you look at it, people don't understand really the depth of how important it is to maintain a healthy cervical spine in overall health and well-being. That is not understood. Somebody gets, acid reflux. The first place they're going to look is their stomach. They're not going to look at the alignment of their structure. It's just not ingrained. So their why is not big enough. And then the next thing is everybody tells you to sleep on your side, right? Because of glymphatic drainage. So that's beat into people's heads. Because remember, we're only looking at recharge and repair. Nobody's looking at the structure that you're destroying at night when you're sleeping, because nobody's aware of it. There's no research on it that they even understand what that's doing. So what I had to do is I had to base all of my stuff on law and then do my own research. Law is Wolff's Law. Bone will remold based on the stresses applied. Davis's Law, tissue will remold based on the stresses applied. And then the writing reflex, body posture adjusts to head position. So all these things, when you integrate them together, these are laws of adaptability. It's how the body works. It's like gravity. You don't need to do another research study to tell me which is going to drop faster, because you have a law that says they're both going to drop at a specific rate. So if I have a law and I understand that if I want to have a bent arm, I take my arm, I hold it like this for 4 years, and I'll have a bent arm because the tissue is going to adapt to it. So if I want to remold the structure in the other way, because I understand the nervous system is really important to be able to maintain a healthy spine, to have a healthy nervous system, I just need to stretch it that way. You did use a term, and I want to be very cautious on the term that you used and and then how I want to reframe it. Okay. You use the term support. Anytime you support something, you make that thing in the body weaker. Anytime, whether you support the ankle, whether you wear a sneaker, you make the body weaker, whatever you're supporting. So the difference in the model with the neck nest is I don't even want to use the word support, but we are putting something under the neck, but you're using the weight of the head to distract. And distract is gentle stretching into the cervical curve. That's what's going to elicit the curve. So a lot of people will use a cervical pillow where their neck is supported, but their head is also supported. And by doing that, you're still dropping the arch down. So the body responds to stress. Remember, eustress, distress, right? So we put a gentle stretching, which is a stress into the cervical curve, over a period of time, the tissue will adapt. If you just hold the tissue there, it's not going to adapt because you're supporting it.
Yeah. It makes so much sense. And I've talked about this previously with running shoes specifically. I used to wear high arch orthotics, and I gave my feet all the support I could possibly want. And then one day I questioned that and decided I'm going to try removing them. And I went to barefoot minimalist shoes, and a lot of my nagging issues and injuries and like shin splints and stuff that plagued me throughout my athletic career, those all completely went away after, 6 months of switching my footwear. And so I totally agree with you that whenever you're outsourcing the body's key functions, such as support, you're going to weaken the tissue around it and contort it into a different position than is ideal. So if people want to get started with this, you suggest they either get a neck nest or if they're on the road and they don't have access to one, a towel or something, and just start, I'm guessing, slowly in some way. I don't know how you would start this slowly, but I'm guessing that it'll take some exposure to adapt to it.
Here's like a pillow that somebody will normally have, right? So what you do, instead of putting your pillow flat, right? A pillow defined as a support for your head. We know, no good. So we're going to take it, we're going to angle it up like this. And then you're going to come back and you're going to tuck it under your neck. And you're going to try to just start like that for an hour a night underneath your neck so that the head is still over the back of it.
Basically, it's standing up in the bed, and you're doing that for an hour a night to start out with. And then eventually, after you get more experience and exposure to this, then you can do it the entire night.
Yeah, and you got to make sure it's a soft pillow. It can't be hard. And then One of the issues too is if you have ADD or stuff like that, you're going to not feel safe in that position because you're going to feel like you're falling back. So then the other thing you could do is you could put two pillows, because remember, angling the neck is what's important, not as much as angling your body. So you can put two pillows up, sleep slightly sitting up, and still angle your neck at the same time. And then that's a good way to make a gap between going from a side sleeper to a back sleeper, because when you're angled, you're going to feel less tension on your lower back and less tension through your ribs.
Well, I was going to ask you your take on increasing the height of the head of your bed to support glymphatic drainage, but it looks like this right here could do something similar without even having to do that, just by using some extra pillows in bed.
Yeah, you can do it through extra pillows. When does glymphatic drainage happen the most? Like, when does the body rinse the body, So glymphatic drainage is basically everything swelling, okay? That
Maybe we should define what glymphatics.
I'm going to really dumb it down. There's avascular, which means certain joints don't get blood supply. And then certain cells, when they're working, they need to get nutrients within the cells, with like fluid within the cells to be able to flush the cells of toxins and different things like that. A lot of it happens in the brain. A lot of it happens with cerebral spinal fluid around the brain. There's just many different things, and the body detoxes at night when you're sleeping. So, and that more specifically happens when you're horizontal, because gravity's not working on your body the entire night. So then so everything in your body swells. Every joint in your body is swollen when you wake up. You're actually taller in the morning than any other part of the day because everything's swollen. Then when you stand up and you start moving, that movement's like a pump. Then that fluid gets absorbed back into the tissue, and your joints got nutrients at night, and then all of a sudden they're ready to work during the day. So that glymphatic drainage is critical. It's critical to have a healthy structural spine, so the flow goes around the entire spinal cord. Nobody talks about when you lose the structure of the spine, what that does to impede cerebral spinal fluid, which destroys the glymphatic drainage.
I'm guessing based on everything you've said so far, your hierarchy would be to sleep on your back with the neck distraction, I'll call it, as the very best ideal position to sleep in, at least for 1 hour your night, ideally the whole thing once you get there. Then after that, side sleeping would come next for whatever different reasons. And then after that, the very worst would be to sleep with your belly face down on the bed.
So that's great, because I'm coming up with a health clock, right? So we have a biological, like a time clock, right? Midnight to midnight is 24 hours. My 24-hour health clock starts when you go to bed. So it's going from 9 to 9, right? And then so what we do and how we prepare, I want chronologically to work on a health clock, I guess you can say. So health starts at 9 p.m. the night before with how you fall asleep. And then it ends with how you go to bed, right? The last time that you eat. So my health clock is a little bit different. So yes, health starts at 9 p.m. when you go to bed. And it's the positioning. Remember, you're only in control. We love to control things. We love it. You're only in control with how you fall asleep. Once you fall asleep, your subconscious is going to take over. I love the people that say, oh yeah, I sleep on my left side. Or I sleep on my right side. I'm like, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to lie on the couch in the position that you fall asleep on and try to watch a 2-hour movie without turning. There's no way you laugh because you can't. So you, with that in mind, you're setting yourself up to toss and turn the entire night. Average person toss and turns 20 to 40 times a night because you're in pain, because the position you're falling in is not sustainable. So falling asleep the right way with how you fall asleep is critically important. So we start our health clock out falling asleep on our back with a pillow under our neck. Then you're going to have, and this is why we have programs for people, how you manage your airway, how you don't snore, and what you do to your jaw, and and different things like that, and how you use your covers. And so there are many aspects to this. But if you can just start by falling asleep on your back with a pillow underneath your neck, that's the first health thing that you do during your health clock day.
Just 1 hour per night is enough to make a significant difference.
It's enough to get the ball rolling. Yes. And then that 1 hour will turn into 2 hours. That 2 hours will turn into 3 hours eventually. But the habit is, that's what I'm a specialist in. The ritual of how to fall asleep, right? That, and then whatever happens in the middle of the night, all other experts can tell you what's happening and when you're going in these cycles and what's happening and then coming out. I am going to give you the best chance to be able to get the best night's sleep.
I've previously read that part of the reason that we toss and turn is because of like pressure spots and we get uncomfortable in whatever position. And it's interesting to reflect on the body, even when you're in like REM sleep and like temporarily paralyzed, so you don't enact some of the dreams, the vivid dreams you're having, that you're still shifting like that, because it must be very important not to stay stationary in an uncomfortable spot like that for too long.
So the body will toss and turn for three main reasons. First, the body's in pain, right? Your pain center and your sleep center are right next door to each other. So when it feels pain, it's going to toss. That's why if you have alcohol, and which numbs your pain centers, you wake up very stiff. I slept the wrong way. You didn't sleep the wrong way. It's just your body stayed in that position 3 times longer because it didn't sense the pain because of your poor sleeping position. And then number 2, the body doesn't feel safe. It feels too exposed. And then the third one, everybody knows this: when you have a fever at night, you don't sleep well. Or if you eat late, you don't sleep well. It's body core temperature. Your temperature's running too hot or too cold. So those are really the 3 reasons why people will toss and turn. Body's in pain, doesn't feel safe, temperature regulation. So if we know those, we can then set the body up in a place to be able to allow. You could put a glass of water on my chest and it will still be there when I wake up. I do not move at all. 0. And my hands might move, but I don't move.
Interesting. That's because you don't have that same need to move when your body is feeling safe and you've taken care of the other 2 and you're doing in the position that we just discussed.
In a normal situation, when you fall asleep on your back, you will not toss and turn.
Yeah. So the safety mechanism you were talking about a second ago, one of the reasons that you would toss and turn is because your body doesn't feel safe. There's something, I believe it's called the first night syndrome, where you're in a new place and you have trouble sleeping initially because your body doesn't feel safe per se. Do you have any tips on overcoming that?
Yeah, take a nap the next day and try to get better sleep. Because I traveled so much, it's that first night syndrome is a real thing. And we created a supplement that's called Deep Sleep, and it's magnesium. It's got L-arginine to help your body cool. But still, even taking that, it helps me a little bit. It's tough. That first night's always tough for me.
Well, Dr. Martone, now that we're talking about this, I'm thinking about some of the supplements that I've been using to help me sleep deeper. And I'm wondering if it's a good idea to be using them if they are, say, disabling my body's like natural, like proprioceptive, like feedback mechanism of like not having one of those 3 components and therefore wanting to shift and turn. And if it's instead like hitting me over the head metaphorically with a sledgehammer and just like knocking me out, maybe I'm doing myself a disservice by taking those.
Well, what are they?
Glycine, taurine, magnesium, some full spectrum hemp. I have like potassium citrate I'll sometimes use, a variety of different things. I'm not using sleep drugs and medications.
Yeah, that's good. So basically what you're doing is you're taking like amino acids and vitamins that support the natural body's ability to sleep. So I don't have an issue with those.
Okay. So it'll only be something that's stronger, like a really powerful GABA agonist or something that's going to like knock me out, that then I want to be careful.
Yes, GABA agonist. That's a lot of high doses of melatonin, pain medication, NyQuil with codeine, stuff like that.
What else for sleep and posture? Maybe not even necessarily sleep, but for general posture. I know you don't like necessarily things that you do during the day because they're habits that require like willpower to execute on every single time you want to go to do them. Are there any other tips or tricks or hacks or quick things that you like?
Yeah. So remember, body posture, adjust to head position. we can stretch the neck back at night when we sleep, but the neurology is still in control. So what I mean by that is, yeah, you can stretch the tissue back, but then what's going to solidify the neurology so the body holds the head in that position? And that's balance work. So I like wobble boards. I like really hard wobble, not like a Bosu ball. That's not hard enough. Like almost like a Go Fit wobble board on a hard surface where you have to train the brain to get out of pain, and you have to train the vermis. I mentioned that before, but you got to train the vermis at such a level that challenges all of the destruction that wearing a shoe is doing onto the ground, right? Because if you have to understand, your brain atrophies equal to the amount you don't use it. So if you don't read or you don't write, you don't talk, the brain atrophies. You sit down all day long, it's going to atrophy because it's not getting that vestibular, that sensory sent into the brain. By challenging your center of gravity that much, you stimulate the brain and you build the prefrontal cortex, which is where your executive functioning is.
And of course, there's a lot of different ways of doing that, some safer than others. Are there any recommendations you have of techniques or tools that someone who's a bit later in life can do safely? Because last thing you want is for them to be doing this to work on their brain, to fall, to fracture a hip or something, and then be in a lot more serious of a situation.
Yeah, so TheraBand makes one where it's just a disc, like a foam disc that challenges their balance but doesn't allow them to fall down. I don't recommend, like I have a 92-year-old, which we were talking to. He's like, I just can't seem to do this. And I'm like, tell me how you're doing. He's like, I'm holding on to my kitchen table. Well, you have to understand, if you're holding on to a table, you're going to be leaning forward. Most people are okay forward. They're not okay backwards. So once he lets his hands off, he's going to fall backwards. So I told him, instead of doing that, go into a corner of the wall backwards and hold yourself here, and then, just touch your hands to the wall, because you're going to be fine falling forward because your body will put your foot out. Falling backwards is where you're going to stumble and fall. So put the wobble board or whatever you have up against a wall, into a corner of a wall. Use your two hands to challenge yourself backwards, but I'm not worried about you falling forward.
It seems that the body also really prefers like small incremental changes over a longer time span rather than like a quick, hard-hitting therapy or session or something in order to make like lasting, persistent changes. Are there any other things that we can do? So we say we're sleeping with the neck distraction that we discussed previously. We're doing a little bit of balance work, say a few minutes per day. Are there any other ways of like soothing the nervous system into accepting these changes?
Nick, you're a sharp tack. You've done your homework. Yeah. So, and whenever you make a decision, always take your decisions to the extremes to be able to figure out where the middle is. So, for instance, what's better for the muscle? If you needed to get let's say you need to get down into a split, would putting yourself into a split in 2 seconds, would that be better? Or going into a long stretch over 5 minutes, right? And allow the tissue to relax. So tissue does better over a long period of time. If you do it too quick, it's going to break. So always take your decisions to the end ranges. What causes a joint to degenerate is adaptation. So arthritis, what causes arthritis? Oh, my mother had it, my father had it. Oh, I have it in my back. Listen, that's all garbage. It's not hereditary. What causes arthritis is adaptation. The body, by law, does not make mistakes. It's adapting to stress. So tell me what's better. I'm going to ask you a question. Let's say, right, there's no issue right now. If I was to if I want to degenerate my joint, would I move it around or would I cast it?
Oh, you'd cast it.
That makes sense to you, makes sense to me. But I can tell you millions and millions of people in the medical field believe that it's hypomobility, not hypermobility, that causes degeneration. It's not the way the body adapts. In a hypomobile segment, like in the spine where there's 25 joints creating one range of motion, if you make some hypomobile, you're going to have hypermobility above and below. but it's not the hypermobility that's causing the degeneration. That's what I mean. When you start to think about how the body works, take it to extremes. So, in order for you to think and calm down and get into this heart rate variability state or this parasympathetic state, are you going to run from a tiger or are you going to sit down and meditate? You're going to meditate. So, what is the best way to stimulate calmness and relaxation and body healing? Meditate and then get yourself into a high heat situation. So if you put yourself in a high heat situation, it stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. If you're sleeping and you use pressure over your eyes or pressure over your head, like with the sleep mask, that stimulates safety, just like the ostrich sticking its head in the ground when it's in trouble. If you want to sleep better and more soundly, you can use pressure over your eyes and you'll get 20 to 30% improvement in deep sleep just by using pressure because you are simulating safety.
Oh, that's really cool. I was going to also ask you about your thoughts on weighted blankets. And it sounds like you can get the benefits of weighted blankets without even a blanket. You just pop an eye mask on.
There you go. It's, remember, pain, safety, temperature, right? If we know those are the reasons, and airway problems, but if we know those are the reasons why we don't sleep well, we can take those to the extremes and then nurture it. So I know if anybody that has a sleep problem in, let's say, one of our programs, you'll go through it. It's not me that's going to help you. It's just the understanding of knowing how the body adapts. You give me a law, I shall not kill. I don't have to go to 1,000 people and say, can I kill this person? Can I kill this person? Can I kill this person? No, I have an overriding law that defines my actions. So if we know these specific things, then, and I can teach you those laws, you can start build a sleeping plan or a health 24-hour health plan that starts to work into your rituals.
We'll start to wind down. Before we do, what's your take on foam rolling or like very light stretching, say for a few minutes a day to like get some mobility back in the spine or the cervical vertebrae?
I love it. I anytime you stress the tissue, part of the aging process is scar tissue in specific tissue. So if you do gentle stretching to help reposition that scar tissue in the line of the fibers, scar tissue is like picture the grains of wood going one way. Scar tissue is tissue that goes the opposite way. You can stretch that tissue into the grain of the wood, even though the scar tissue is there, it's not going to be as much of an issue. So foam rolling, light stretching, I love that stuff.
Well, Dr. Martone, if people want to connect with you, to grab a neck nest, to join one of your programs, how do they go about that?
They can go to necknest, necknest.com. If they use the code NIC10, right? NIC10, they'll save 10% off of anything that we have at NeckNest. If they're interested in the education, right, which is really what I think, like, I'm not in the sleep industry to sell pillows. I'm in the sleep industry to change lives, because the why behind the pillow is more important to me than a pillow itself. They can go to drsleepright.com, drsleep, sleepright.com. They can take a quick sleep risk assessment, see how their sleep habits are affecting them, and they can choose a couple of different programs that we have, low-cost programs that they can put themselves in just to continue their education.
All right. If there was a worldwide burning of the books and all knowledge on earth is lost, but you get to save the works of 3 teachers, who would you choose and why?
First, the Bible, right? I'd save that one. And one thing that really has been a game changer for me, which I really loved, is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. I just really think that, the understanding how we work and how the brain works. And then another book that's been transformational in my world is Driven to Distraction by Ned Hallowell. It's a book on ADD. And it's not so much that ADD is a disease, it's more of a gift. So understanding how your brain works, understanding like when you react viscerally to something or you're angry about something, it's an old program that's running in your mind. So figuring out how to clear all of that stuff and how you can become a stronger human with education and education in the direction of purpose really has been a game changer for me. And those three books combined really has helped me quite a bit.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I have one final question for you. What is one thing that your tribe does not know about you?
I got surrounded by sharks on a scuba event. So I was down deep in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and we were going for lobsters. And I had a lobster in my bag. We were doing a night dive, so it was right before it was night. So we were doing an orientation dive. And we look up, and there's 15 sharks circling us. So me and my buddy are going back to back, and they're coming in at us, and we're poking them with the stick. Right? I had a knife. He had like a poker stick, and you're down there. You think you're going to get eaten alive, and we look down, and our lobsters were floating. So they were after our lobsters. So we dumped the lobsters, and then once we had like 15 lobsters. So once we let the lobsters go, the sharks let us go, and we were out of there.
I'm sure that affected your sleep that night too.
It did, and it's still affecting my sleep.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Martone, thank you again for joining me on the podcast. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today and understanding more about this really important topic that has not been addressed in nearly the depth and breadth it needs to be. Until next time, I'm Nick Urban here with Dr. Peter Martone, signing out from mindbodypeak.com. Have a great week and be an outlier. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.